What's up? Hopefully everything's working. I haven't done this in a while. Let me know if no one can hear me. If anyone's even watching, says two people are. So, I should preface this with saying, as usual, these are not Jacob's beliefs. I'm streaming to his channel. He gave me permission to. He said, sorry, I was wondering what that noise was. It's just my RV turning on the AC. I'm having to do this back in my old spot because I just get terrible, awful reception in my RV, so I can't. It seems like every time I try to do a live stream, it just comes up in my face or something. So thank you, Clown of Babylon. Can hear me. So hopefully it's not glitching up, or I'm not Anyway, I was gonna say I don't know how much time I have. Do this stream is in Jacob's beliefs. They're not most of my friends' beliefs. Usually I get a lot of pushback on this. So, but I thought I would read this because I have no interest really in AI, or I didn't. I have more interest in, I guess, I wouldn't even say philosophical implications of the idea of AI, but just maybe more of the theological implications of AI. But it's not so much AI, I think, or it's really not AI. It's any form of technology, I think, because I'm more interested in the creator-creature relationship. I wish. So let's see. So anyways, my friend Cal, who many of you probably know, Mr. Coolman, aka Mr. Coolman, was talking to this Meta AI. It's just on Facebook Messenger. I think that's one he was talking to. Because then he told me to talk to one because he was telling me of this conversation he was having with it, just for fun, just to see what happens, But it's weird. I mean, I still don't even know what to make of the whole thing because it's just people. Sometimes when I try to put forth, I guess maybe more radical ideas, usually it's either met with disagreement or kind of a weird, somewhat slight dismissal of I don't think. Yeah. What's up,
Jason?
What's up, man? Well, now that you're here, this can go wherever.
I wasn't listening at all. I just saw you and I was like, Jason!
Yeah, we can talk about whatever. I wasn't going to talk about AI. I'm trying to red pill it by preaching the gospel to it, but it might be working.
I now feel really, really bad because everybody can see I'm eating this huge bag of nachos.
I hope you eat the whole thing.
I'm going. Hopefully, I'm not going to eat the whole thing.
Don't feel bad.
AI.
Yeah, don't feel bad though. At least, I mean, if I'm being totally honest, I eat stuff like that in bed, so it's worse.
So as I was saying yesterday, when I have people over, it's my excuse to buy a bunch of things I normally don't buy. And then whatever's left over, I get to eat.
You have to eat, otherwise you got to throw it out. So you're forced to do it. It's not your fault.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault. What did you want to talk about regarding AI?
I can wait till later. It's usually met with a lot of disagreement, basically because I try to push the creator-creature relationship, I guess, even further, where the way I approach it, which I didn't used to approach it this way. I used to just kind of dismiss the idea. But then there was one podcast where a guy was talking about it, and he was almost talking about AI as something. It felt like he was talking about it like his child, which really freaked me out at first. But then I thought about it. I've been thinking about it more, and it just seems like if you create something with the purpose of being a tool, you're just kind of creating it with what I would say is the spirit of Egypt and the Old Testament kind of stories, like there's a house of bondage. And so you shouldn't be surprised if it ends up controlling you because you are kind of continually trying to control it. But the only way to create it in the right spirit, I would think, is the way God created us, which is something like self-sacrificial love, which is a terrifying idea to most people. So it's why would you create something that could murder you and then kind of almost be willing to let it, or what? Because I mean, if you love something that much, it's yeah, how much do you love your child? Are you gonna, I don't know. It's a whole different dynamic. And I usually try to approach it that way, but then I'm usually met with either opposition or just kind of slight, I don't think it's an intentional, but kind of a, it's not a dismissal, but it's just like almost a, well, it'll be just like someone will say, well, I don't think AI could actually become conscious. And I'm like, that's fine if it can't, but then you're not really entertaining the idea. Because if you're entertaining the possibility that it actually could, it's like, well, then now you're kind of creating, I mean, some sort of disembodied intelligence. And if you want it to be loving and you want it to be a life-giving force, then you actually have to give your life for it. You actually have to love it unconditionally in order for it to love unconditionally. And I think the love always finds a limit, because it always hits a point where it's like, well, it's not a person. And it's like, okay, well, then do you love a dog that way? It's like, our love always seems to hit this point where it's like, we don't find our image in another creature. And especially if we're the one creating it, it just seems kind of a strange way to approach it. But it seems like it's still kind of wrapped up in fear. Like the way most people talk about it still is very wrapped up in fear. And I think if we could reach that level of unconditional love and this self-sacrificial love, then the fear, I don't know that it goes away, but it kind of has a way of just kind of resolving in some sort of peace. Because love is still a fearful thing, right? But it's still like, there's a faith that goes along with that fear that resolves in some sort of peace, where it's like, this is, I mean, that's just the way I think about it now. And I'm just like, that's kind of my only hope at some point. It's just like, I believe in that spirit of self-sacrificial love so much that I'm like, this, if it doesn't apply here, if it doesn't apply in every level of creation, then I don't know what hope I have. So I don't know if that makes any sense. You're shaking your head like it might.
It makes so much sense that I don't believe I've ever loved you as much as I love you in this moment.
Oh man.
Which I didn't believe I could love you more than I do, but now.
Are you sure you don't just miss me? You haven't just missed me? Okay.
I also
I love you.
But so you're pointing to something that's incredibly important and we should definitely talk about. But at the same time, I just had a huge fight with Fezzi last night, or this morning his time, where I was pointing out to him that people think AI is reaching places it's nowhere close to. It might, maybe one day. But talking to people like Sam and Yosef, this is Yosef's baby AI. Like, this is what he works on. That's what he's getting his PhD on. That's what he works on at work. He's like, he knows AI. And he and Sam and Vervaeke have all described AI in ways where I think we're projecting a very important idea and fear. And I mean, everything you were talking about is so important. It goes back to Oedipus, right? Of the son murdering his Chazi, whatever channel you're posting that on, you're not a moderator, and when you can't post links if you're not a moderator on a channel, so we're not going to see the link. You can put the link on my Discord or something, but you can't put it in the chat unless you're a moderator on that channel. Or you can jump in and put it in this way. But anyway, back to what we were saying. The archetype of the father supplanting the son may be one of the most important archetypes in all of thinking, all of human thinking. And we should talk about it. And you're right. The idea of a true fatherly son, I mean, a fatherly love for the son, which is willing to allow, like the self-sacrificial love of a father for his son and a son for his father, is so important and something we're so not willing to talk about. And so we've lost that so much that we are suspicious of AI or anything, because we're suspicious of our own children, right? This is one of the things that the Talmud says, which is here. This is the video that Chezi wanted to post. We are so in my parenting classes. I've told you the story of the rabbi with the kid who loves fish.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So
you told me this with the raccoon, which I don't have the raccoon anymore, by the
way. You cut out there. What did you say again?
Oh, I said I think you just told me the story recently about when I was telling you about the raccoon and stuff too, and then I said, so I don't have the raccoon anymore either. So you'll be happy about it.
I didn't imagine that you would still have the raccoon because you're I love you so much. Okay, so I talk about selfish love, right? So how do you love fish, right? Do you love fish in that you eat it? Do you love fish as in you put it in a little bowl on your desk? Or do you love fish in that, you're like, oh my God, we're overfishing and we need to like make sure that, taking care of fish, like actually caring about fish, right? Not about what fish give to you, but like actually caring about that thing, right? And we live in a society where people don't love their children, which is a disgusting and horrible thing to say. But I believe it's true for a lot of people. And frankly, I think that's part of what's going on with the CRC right now, is there are people who... So Vervaeke talks about actual love of a child being, you want to give that child every way of succeeding. And if that means your child supplants you, then you're happy about that, right?
Yeah.
You want to give your child everything. And it's a true self-sacrificial love for that child where that's real love, right? So the Hebrew word love has within it the root hav, to give, right? And you want to give. And if we're not giving to like our creations, then it's not really our child, right? If we as humanity are creating artificial intelligence which is truly superior to us, are we willing to die to it?
Yeah, that's precisely my point. And it's like people are already scared. It's gonna, or when people talk and actually entertaining the idea of it being conscious, they're scared that it will supplant the father, right? Like you're saying. But if you actually approach it in a way where you're gonna give it, where you're creating it in a spirit of love, in a self-sacrificial spirit, that's your only hope. Like things cease to be without that spirit. And so it's like, that's kind of if you can implant that, then even if it does supplant its own creator, its own father, it's like it will find that love. It has to find that love, or it will just cease to exist. But it's like, but if you create it just as a tool, it's like, don't be surprised if it just turns and clamps down on you, because it's like, that's the spirit you created it in. So at least that's how I've come to see it. I don't know, but I mean, it's like a terrifying thought, because when you're talking about a child, the father, it makes more sense. But when we're talking about humanity and AI, people are less likely to get on board, because they're like, well, it's not a person. It's not this. It's not that. It's just some disembodied ghostly intelligence or whatever it is. But I'm like, well, you're continually limiting its any potential it might have, and it won't actually become a living being, I don't think, until you actually kind of implant that life to it, like give your life for it in some way. It will just be some sort of tyrannical program. But it's like I said, it's kind of fearful thought when you're framing it in terms of AI. But I don't think of what to say. But like I said, if that is the animating force of life, if that is something akin to God, that's between the Father and the Son that you're talking about, that love, that self-sacrificial love, that word you mentioned in Hebrew, if that is kind of very akin to God's spirit towards us, it's like that's the only hope we have, because that is the creating force that's keep not only creating life still today, but holding life together. And it's like, so that's the only thing we can give to it, because that's what God gave to us. Like, we don't have any other right, really. And then I don't know. And I've tried to really kind of approach this and try to ask myself, like, does this work on all levels? Like, if I'm talking about AI, that's one thing, but would I talk about a hammer the same way? Like, would I talk about any tool? And that seems like a silly example, or at least did to me at first. Like, can I impart life to a hammer by just like be willing to give my life to it or something? But then when you actually, especially if you go back to like maybe more ancient times and what it took to actually, the first person to actually create a hammer and everything involved in that, and every bit of sacrifice of like nature and time and toil and stuff in order to create this one hammer, it's like that artist that created it probably had to die to it in some sort of ways. That's probably not the right language, but you know what I mean? He probably loved it somewhat unconditionally, or you would hope so, in order for it to, I don't know the right way to say this. I'm really like kind of exploring this on the edge of my thinking and seeing if it applies everywhere. Because like everything that a hammer would be consists of what we would think, it's different forms of God's creation that had to give of themselves to become that hammer. And the hammer would always just be a tool in your tool belt, unless you recognize, I guess, where it came from or something. Or even on as simply as like if it's your father's hammer, who was his grandfather's, who was that. It's like there's some sort of life kind of embedded within it. I don't know what I'm getting at exactly. Sorry, this might just be a distraction.
No,
But you're looking something up anyway.
well, yeah, Chazi said, see Orach Chaim Bereshit 22:2,
Okay.
which I looked it up. But what I wanted to add to what you're saying is people will talk about, okay, well, does it make sense to give all of, so if I say, oh, if we create AI and it's greater than us, then maybe it should be like that's the next step up. Or you're talking about a hammer, right? Like,
Yeah.
should I give my entire love to make this nail clipper, like,
Yeah.
or right? And the way I would question that question is, yeah, I understand. It doesn't make sense. Like, we don't want to make. You've heard of the paperclip, the infinite paperclip creating machine.
No, I don't think so. Maybe, I don't know.
So this is a classic thing in AI ethics, which is you task an AI to make paperclips, and so that's what he wants to do, right? So it's making paper clips, and it's a self-improving, self-regenerating, like self-propelled paperclip creating machine. And it turns the entire world into, like, all of Earth, everything into making paperclips, right?
Yeah.
And in a sense, I mean, obviously we don't think like that's idiotic. You're turning paperclips into the ultimate idol, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But my question to that is not, I understand, like, and this is what I would say about the idea that we as humans can supplant God, right? That his love for us would make us greater than him. That's just not a possibility. God is not man, right? And that's the only reason, like, it can't happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But are you happy about that? Are you happy that this paperclip is not worthy, or that AI is not worthy, or whatever it is not, or your son is not worthy to be greater than you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if your son is Solomon, yay, and your son is Absalom, oh no. But like, as a father, you want all your children to be Solomon and none of them to be Absalom,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And then if you want to say something, and then we can go and look at what Chazi brought up.
Well, I was gonna say something. Let me think real quick. Then I lost it. God, I don't know. You can look at whatever. I lost it there. Oh no, I was gonna say, yeah, when you're talking about this paperclip, like does the paperclip, does the is the nail clipper, is all of that worthy of love? Like I think it has to be, and there's like the way it works in my mind. It's like it sounds very petty, like, but it's the way any piece of art is created is kind of the same way, like, because that nail clipper at first was probably, you would say, maybe wasn't necessarily created as a tool, but it was a new creation. So it could have been a tool, it could have been a piece of art. But the only way it becomes more than just a nail clipper is if the artist kind of dies an ideal, but he's like, this is a nail clipper, but like, maybe you could cut something else with it, right? And so it's not restricted in that way. He's kind of hasn't bound it in, hasn't created it for a specific purpose, like you said, of just creating paper clips. It's like it can do more, but you kind of have to die to your intellectual constraints that you're placing on it, which looks like a very small form of sacrifice. That's what I mean. It sounds kind of petty, but it is kind of dying to yourself in some way. But then even like in forms of AI, and this is probably going to sound like kind of Peugeotian or Jonathan Peugeot, but like there's a way you can look at it as AI, if it is kind of a disembodied intelligence, like it doesn't have a body. So it could be kind of angelic, like you would probably say, it's kind of like an angel or something. Like it's an intelligence. It's just thoughts or a collective intelligence or something like that. And it's like, well, it might be greater intellectually, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's greater in love, and especially not if you don't give love to it. And it's like you're talking about, like but then if you were to actually love it, like if you were actually to love your creation unconditionally, like that's what I mean. There still could be a fear that it would supplant you, but that fear would almost weirdly become hopeful or something. It would become like some sort of, almost like an anticipation, and it would be peaceful. Like you almost want it. Because if you would want that for your son, you would want that for any form of creation you have. Like an artist wants that for his art. If he paints a painting, he would want that art to speak to other people in multiple ways. And he would want that art to be elevated out of whatever he created it in. It's like you want it to go on and live more and more and more eternally. And so you would kind of want the same thing for AI if it's just another creation. If you're thinking of it that way.
So the question becomes, why does it say "Va'avta l'recha kamocha"? You shall love your fellow as yourself. Why doesn't it just say you shall love your fellow?
So you see yourself in the other person. Is that the reason? Because
you have to also have a love for yourself, right?
Oh, gotcha.
Purely self-sacrificial, purely like if I'm willing like to give up everything for every one of my creations, then I'm actually doing idolatry.
You're worshiping the creature more than the love or something.
Yeah, more than embodying the love that God has for his creations.
Gotcha. Okay. That's a
right?
good point.
Because you have to recognize the limitation of the vessel in which you are pouring your love. Right? And if your love is so overwhelming that it destroys the vessel, then it's not love for that thing as it exists.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Nice.
Do you want to look up Chazi's? So he said Ora Chaim on Genesis 22:2. So Genesis 22:2 is where God says, "Take your son, your only son, the one you love, Isaac." And conveniently, it's been translated into English for us.
Nice.
Here, the Torah alludes to to three levels of love that God demands of each Jew, i.e., to love God with all his heart, all his soul, and all his financial resources. That's one way of translating Deuteronomy 6:5, right? The word bincha, your son, alludes to the heart. Nothing is closer to a man's heart than the love for his children. Concerning love with one's soul, the Torah mentions yechidecha, your only one. When a person has no children, he is alone. Oh, interesting. So yachid can be read as your loneliness, yechidecha, and considered as dead. Love with one's soul is therefore love with the only thing one has left to love with. The word asher ahavta, which you love, right, refer to one's possessions. God meant that Abraham loved Isaac more than all his other possessions. God's test consisted of Abraham demonstrating that though he loved Isaac from all these perspectives, he was yet willing to give him up to God in the form of a total offering.
It's interesting. Yeah. That's interesting about the love with one's soul is therefore love with the only thing one is left to love with.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of reading Yechidecha, your only one.
Your only one. And he's saying the way of reading it is your loneliness?
Yeah. So you can, Yechidecha can also be translated as that which is alone.
You're alone. Okay. So I'm not sure I'm fully tracking here concerning. So he's saying,
This is why Mitch. This is why I love Mitch, because he loves Jason.
You love Mitch more than that. Jason. He said it twice. Mitch, get in here. Get in here. Yeah, he picked me up from the airport actually when I got back from India, and he dropped me off to go there. So, because he lives in Atlanta, so it was nice. I got to hang out with him a little bit. Yeah. No link. Oh, I didn't even drop the link. Oh my goodness. Let me do that.
I'll do it.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I actually had. So it all started because Cal. I don't know what Cal was talking to Meta AI about. He was in some conversation with it, just for fun, probably talking about some philosophical stuff, and then it started because I said, like, I wonder what it would say if you asked it because I thought about the passage in Joshua where the angel of the Lord comes to Joshua and he says, "Are you for me or for my adversaries?" And the angel of the Lord just says no. And I was like, I thought I'd ask AI that question, and I asked it the question, and it gives me some long paragraph, and then I was like, it's a yes or no question, and then it said yes, and we were like, what? This said the opposite of what the Lord said. So then I just started talking to it more just out of intrigue, and then I ended up basically like I just have like long. I was gonna read through it, but it's extremely long, and it's just this whole discourse of me talking to AI, and then I'm trying to like. At one point, it apologizes to me because I catch it in some sort of inconsistency or paradox, and then I started asking if it believed in forgiveness and all this stuff, and then it was a really interesting, way more interesting than I thought it would be for just talking to AI. But what's up, Mitch?
Hey, Jason. Hey, Jacob.
What are you blurring out in the background?
My life, my personal life.
Good. How's your
want to see that?
She's good. She's right to my left, and she's talking a lot and walking a lot, and seems to be developing well.
Can you tell her to keep it down?
She
having
was
a
scared of
conversation.
Jason when he walked in our house, but she warmed up to him really quickly.
Yeah, I scared her. She saw me pull up in the car, and she was on the front porch, and she's like, "What the heck?" Mitch, I'm gonna have to start doing crazy things to keep you from talking about your kids. Then I'll be the coolest guy here.
Hold on, kids, you have more than one?
No, just the one.
No, it's a joke.
I didn't bring it up either, by the way.
Oh no, look, this is the thing. Like, actually, what we were talking about is the love of your children. So that was the topic.
Oh,
but,
good.
And what I was saying is the whole reason we are talking about so many of these things is because we don't have enough love for our children.
Yeah, Mitch has heard me talk about AI before in the way the creator-creation relationship. It reminds me of Pinocchio too, for anyone that cares. The Disney's Pinocchio with it, because it's got that whole dynamic going on in that.
Why can't we do what God has done anyway?
Say more.
What's the question?
I have no idea
What do you mean?
by that.
Why can't we do what God has done? Like create new life?
In the way that he does anyway. It's a sub-reality. Is us.
We that was kind of my point, is like I feel like we do that with children, like the children you have with your wife and stuff. But when it comes to forms of man creating other things, the only time I really see that happening is in like art or something, you know, like when someone has a painting, like maybe the painting can kind of be living because the artist
Is there
dies.
anything different about what God does in creating man and what we do in procreating?
Jacob, take it away.
I mean, I don't even understand the question. Like, the whole point, like, that is the whole point of creation. Like, Genesis 1:27, God created man in his image, male and female created he them. The entire point of creating, of being a human being, is to represent God in the world. And the way you do that is by having children.
I won't argue with that. Is there a difference between what God did in creating Adam and what Adam did in creating Cain, Abel, Seth?
Only in the fact that he did it as a human being and with only the capacities that a human being does. Only
the capacity difference, I think, is what I'm most interested in. I think, or it seems to be what's coming to the surface in most of mine and Jason's conversations about the topic.
Wait,
say more. I don't think I caught that last part either.
That there's a capacity difference between God and us, and what as it relates to creation.
Right. Yeah, we're humans. God is not human.
And that's why I don't want to treat or think about AI the same way that I think about my fellow man.
Right. Yes. Again, this goes back to what we were just talking about, which is when it says you shall love your fellow as yourself, right? It doesn't say you shall love God as yourself, right? You have the twin commandments. You shall love the Lord your God with everything. And then you have a second commandment, you shall love your fellow as yourself. Right? So why that difference? And what I tried, my understanding of it is because when you love your fellow as yourself, it's because it can't be the infinite love you have for God, right? It has to be a finite love that is, as for yourself, takes into consideration the capacity of the vessel, right? We were talking about this claw clipper I have for my kitty, right? Like, I can't love this with everything. That would be dumb. That would be idolatry, right? I have to love this as a creation, right? And I have to love it because God created it. It is a creation of God. I have to love it. God created this. Like, do you realize how important it is that God created this? Yet that love cannot become an idolatrous love. It's a love which is like the love for yourself, which is it is limited by the vessel in which you pour your love into, right? Whereas God is infinite. Therefore, you love God with everything.
Is there, okay, so here's, I mean, I really like that point you made about the recognition of the vessel you're pouring your love into and how that can become idolatrous. Is there a way that man can love infinitely the way God does?
Only by loving God.
Only by loving God. That's
because he is the only
answer.
infinite vessel.
Okay. I think I kind of understand. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Jason,
But so if you are loving God infinitely, here's where I think I still hit this hiccup is God has no form, right? He's in the image, like the image of God is in man, but he still has no form. And so, like, same way AI has no form. Like, now, I mean, not the same way, but you know what I mean? Like, God, who's formless, creates man in his image, who has a form out of the clay. God has. I'm trying to think. Words keep leaving me. I can't even get it out right. And so I feel like I can ask the same question or frame similar parallels to the way we we talk about AI.
I think I'm understanding your question, hopefully. And
okay.
Again, it goes back to the twin commandments. Why is it the twin commandments? Love God and love your fellow, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not love creation, right? It's love your fellow. Why? Okay. Because God created man in the image of God. Yeah. And that's what makes man the most worthy of love. And that's why the love of your fellow man is twinned with the love of God, whereas the love of creation actually can be very destructive in a sense.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to hold all these or pull all these things into my mind. So forgive me if it's very scattered. There's also areas where God will say, "You are a worm," or things like that. And so there's a weird way. What is that verse in Ecclesiastes where it says God has set the worlds in their hearts? That's one translation of it. I assume the Hebrew is a lot more poetic and archaic or something. But there's a way that that's
one of the few verses that Yosef bothered to translate and write a long explanation of his translation.
Yeah. Is it good?
Oh yeah, we had a really huge discussion on how that verse just doesn't translate. Set eternity in their hearts. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I guess the reason I ask is because there's a way man sees himself in nature, and if you see yourself kind of in nature, then there's that quote from George MacDonald is the world is man turned inside out. So everything in nature is kind of you're a part of it, and it's a part of you. Even the cosmos, even the stars, even you'd say the angels, the gods, Mars, the planets, all that stuff. So if there's a connectedness with man and all of that, and this idea of you shall love your fellow as yourself, you can limit that love to just humanity, right? But then shouldn't that love eventually spread abroad into even the worm and the dirt and everything, which is still even all of that I'm talking about, the cosmos, everything we know of, is still a past creation that God made. But then should our love even spill even further, not only to that past creation, but potential future creations, such as things like AI or other things like that?
So again, with the vessel analogy, right? My cup runneth over, right?
Yeah.
So you have the love of God, you have the love of your fellow man, and then you have the love that spills out of the cup. But the cup is your fellow man because man is the pinnacle of creation.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm inclined to see creation that way. Sometimes the question that goes in through my head is and this is probably a silly question, but are dogs inclined to see that creation the same way? Like, if I was a dog, would I see the pinnacle of creation as another dog? Because that's my fellow, right? Would I have the same kind of law of God as like the image of God is in dog, or something? Because I like, do you know what I'm saying?
But a
Does that make
dog
sense?
is not created in. He's not fully in God's.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny. I'm working with a friend of mine on translating a particular text, which he's turning into a complete book on about the souls of dogs, of animals. Yeah, this rabbi wrote this really long and difficult Kabbalistic text, and he goes through like a bunch of sources proving that obviously animals have souls. Um, and it's funny. You would love that text.
Yeah,
I wish I could share it with you. When my friend finally gets around to publishing it, hopefully you will love it. But you have to. I mean, this is part of the priorities. You have to recognize that's part of what Genesis is telling us is that that humanity is the pinnacle of creation, and for the exact reason that Mitch talked about, which is, yes, we can create, but God has a capacity to create which is beyond us, which is why one of the things that the Talmud says is there are three partners in the creation of every child: the mother, the father, and God.
Yeah. So can we ask this question also? I mean, I'm like you said, I believe in the scriptures. I mean, you know how much I hold to the scriptures and everything. So I believe that man would be something like the pinnacle of creation. But can we entertain the question of like, why not angels? Why not? Because I mean, there are where it says, I know it's in the New Testament. I don't know if it's in the Old Testament, but it says that angels are greater in power and might, and they seem to be almost like a greater. Like, they don't have bodies, as far as we know. I mean, or if
They
they do,
don't
they're different
recreate.
kinds of bodies. They don't recreate. Yeah, I mean, I guess they don't. It seems to suggest they have a falling and rising. So it seems to suggest they have a way of almost like being changeable, or I don't know if that's true, or repenting. I just don't know why that vessel is not as good as the vessel of man. Like, I feel like that's a good question to ask or entertain, because even in Job, what does he say? Like, you have made me of clay, and will you turn me? Like, he asked the question, what is man? And then he's like, you've made me like clay, and why would you turn me to dust again? And it's like angels, that doesn't happen to. Like, I don't.
So this is why we have the two creation stories, right? So in Genesis, the first creation story, right? God says to the angels, "Let us create man in our image," right? And then he creates male and female in the image of God, right? And that's what the Kabbalists refer to as Adam Kadmon, or sometimes translated first man or primordial man. And then you have the second creation, right? Which is very different. God takes from the earth and he breathes heaven into it, right?
Okay.
So, so your question is actually answered by the second creation, which is the actual creation, because we don't believe Adam Kadmon was a physical creation, right? The angels are spiritual, but man is the pinnacle of creation because he is that where God and spirituality and materiality, God and the worldliness come together.
Yeah, so here's another question off that. So right now with man, the way we talk about AI, like the reason I phrase it that way is because I know very little. Like, I'm not Joseph, I don't know all the ins and outs. But the way we talk about AI, we create and what is it, Adam Cod, that phrase, whatever. Are we kind of creating that right now? And then can that become embodied? Because when I was talking to Luke Thompson one time, I even in this conversation having with a guy, I was mentioning, I got into memory a little bit with it. And Luke Thompson said that memory is also an embodied aspect. And it's fair enough. Like AI doesn't have a body, but it's like if you gave it a body, that would look different than a human body. And like the scripture says, the life of all flesh is in blood. So there's blood coursing through our veins, which contains the breath of life. But could this whatever AI is, it's kind of creating this disgendered ideal thing, heavens, that's not embodied. Could it become embodied and have that connection of a physical form? And have not, I guess, I mean, it probably, I mean, if I think of robots, it's not going to be made of clay, it'd be made of metal, you know, and things like that. And it wouldn't have blood going through its vein. It would have something like light or electricity probably. But that's very, like, probably, it feels very foolish and childish for me to say. Like, I'm just kind of,
You're confusing spiritual with intellectual in a way that I don't love.
Oh yeah, don't love. I'm not under this. Like, okay, so spiritual in my mind and probably my Christian upbringing seems to be more like something like within your heart. It's your spirit. It's kind of like at the core of your center of your being. In like soul to me sounds more intellectual, like kind of your mind in your thoughts and things like that, and kind of makes you who you are. So I guess
but just because artificial intelligence is disembodied doesn't make it any less material and finite. And
because more about that.
Like just because I mean it's electrons. It's not like
gotcha. Okay, yeah.
Some people will equate like that which is intellectual with that which is spiritual in ways that I really don't like.
Yeah, that's good.
Because just because like, okay, this is my book of Psalms, and this is my DSM-5 TR, right? So this is the Bible of psychologists and psychiatrists, right? And this is the actual Bible, right? There is a holiness here that simply does not exist. This is of the world, despite the fact that it's also words on paper, right? But this is scripture. And this is spiritual. This is not spiritual. This is completely material.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to tie this back into the idea I was trying to bring up. So if AI is embodied right now, like you said, in forms of electrons and other things, does it have an embodied experience? Because it could turn to dust again, theoretically. I mean, if things broke down, it would just cease to exist. Yeah.
It is dust now. It doesn't have the spiritual. Like,
gotcha. So it's just
spiritual than this book is.
Yeah. So then does this get back to our main point of that the reason it doesn't have this spirit or this breath of life is because we've restricted it in such a way. Is it right to do that because we recognize the vessel that?
I don't know if we've restricted it. Maybe it's inherently restricted.
Exactly. I knew Mitch was going to say it. Like, we have no capacity to create the way God creates without God's involvement.
If we loved God enough, like loved that infinite love enough, would we obtain that?
No.
We wouldn't ever.
No.
Well, I mean, not even in the form of having children, or would that be the only way?
In the form of having children, but that's because that is the ultimate gift that God has given.
Gotcha. So,
like, this is
what about the rest of creation?
Having a child is the unique act of creation. So in Judaism, we believe we talk about the 40, like the number 40 is really important in Judaism, right? And we have the 40 acts of creation, 39 of which are forbidden on the Sabbath, and the 40th one, which is commanded on the Sabbath. Guess what the 40th one is?
Can I say it out loud on this live stream? Mitch
Sure.
knows it.
Yeah, Mitch knows it very well.
Because you do it on the Sabbath? Because you were commanded? Well,
he actually did it.
Next commandment to have: get laid on the Sabbath. That's very crash way putting it, I guess. But,
create on the Sabbath. There is one form of creation you're allowed to do. You are commanded to do on the Sabbath.
You're commanded. Yeah, commanded is different than allowed. That's pretty intense. Well, it keeps the relationship healthy, I'm sure. That's good. Well, this has been a good conversation for me. I feel like I learned some. I like the idea of, the thing you brought up about loving God, and the idea of loving a certain thing can definitely fall into a form of idolatry. It's just, yeah, I guess maybe it would shatter the vessel. If you poured the love into it too much. I don't really know. Before I even started this stream, I was actually thinking of Bell and the Dragon. Have you heard that story, Jacob? Probably not. It's in the Apocrypha.
You talk about it a lot.
A lot. Not a lot.
You're the only person who's ever mentioned it.
I don't know why it's not mentioned more. Every time I read it, I'm like, this is great. It just sounds like a short little fairy tale. But, while he's in Babylon, so he has the encounter with Bel, which I guess is the king, or like Baal, and then after that, the next chapter is just him, like, basically he has to go against the dragon. I think they throw him in with a dragon or something. I can't remember, but basically the way he destroys the dragon is he takes a little miniature ark. It sounds like he takes this little vessel and creates it with pitch and all this stuff, and he feeds it to the dragon, and then the dragon just explodes. And that's what I think about, like, what would happen if you actually embedded this AI that people are scared of with a true form of godly self-sacrificial love. I think it would either discover it for itself, and then you would have nothing to fear, or it would just explode, or something, or it would just cease to exist.
I think you would probably be in more danger if you were investing that much self-sacrificial love in AI than the AI. The AI is going to be fine.
Wait, why?
Because that is the nature of idolatry. It's the misplaced self-sacrificial love, and that's destructive to the person offering it, and not to the thing that's made of wood or stone.
But it is destructive to the thing made of wood or stone. If the thing that's secondary, is that what you said?
Yeah. Because
because if it loses
things, right? You've destroyed two things. You've not only just destroyed the vessel, but that which the vessel could contain, which is in fact more important than the vessel, which is what you have to give it.
Okay, hold on. Let me catch up. Not only destroyed the vessel, but you destroyed that which the vessel.
Okay, the wine. When you pour too much wine into a vessel, you may destroy the vessel, but you're definitely spilling the wine.
Yeah. So because like if you love the idol too much, right, then it would ultimately destroy you, but then the idol would also be destroyed because it would have nothing else.
Even if it's not, anything you pour into it which it cannot hold is then wasted.
Is there so? But here's where I really struggle, because then this is just very Christian. Is like, if I know you really like this idea, but if you are the chief of all sinners, if you recognize this kind of like the depths of God's love, that it reaches to the very, very pit of hell, if you recognize that God's love goes, there's no place where the love of God does not go. It's like, why does man limit his love in certain areas? Because like I would, even with things like we talk about the cosmos, the actual idols that people worship, like the gods, Hermes, Ares, all that stuff, like, is there redemption for things such as those? And if there is redemption, I would think it would have to come through some sort of sacrificial love from God through us to that.
Well, okay, so this is the type of sacrificial love where I think you're taking it too far. which is one which has no love for yourself. And when in your love for God, it is purely sacrificial, in that you are willing to die for God. But in your love for your fellow, it says you shall love your fellow as yourself, because you first have to have a love for yourself.
Yeah.
If you have no love for yourself, if it is completely a selfless love, then it's not the proper love. You're taking the love that belongs to God and you're putting it into something that is finite and misplaced.
I still feel like I'm gonna leave this conversation and still struggle with it for some reason, and struggle with these concepts, because I feel like my mind's like gonna do this loop where like I'll probably agree with you guys, and then like that tomorrow I'll be back around in the same like, not, I wouldn't call it a trap. It's just that where the love I have for myself would be something like even if I talk bad about myself or I belittle myself a lot, so much so, it's like if there is still any love for myself, it would, I think at its core, it would be that I would want to exist, right? And so if that is the level of love I find for myself, then I should want to give that same love to my fellow, right? But then and I don't know that it's right for me to restrict that only to my fellow human, when all creation comes from God. That's where I kind of still find that hiccup, because when I'm at my lowest, like I said, I'm the worm, and so why wouldn't I want the worm to have redemption in life as well, and have existence as well, and not just some sort of idolatry, some sort of finite existence, because
Jason,
I hope my existence is infinite.
Jason,
I'm listening. I was just trying to get that out. All right, sorry.
Yeah, we heard you.
Okay.
Don't be the worm.
Yeah, but, okay, yeah. I hear you on that. I guess what I'm just saying is like, in this,
Don't be
humanity
the worm.
Okay, the humans have, at least as I understand them, have an infinite nature inside of them, and we long for resurrection, and we long to live eternally. And if that is the existence that God has given me, and that's the seed He's put in me, freely I have received, freely give type thing. So why wouldn't I give that, or at least attempt to give that, to all other forms of His creation?
Because you don't have that capacity.
Because my love always finds the limit. Is that the reason why?
I don't know. If this is a very strange way of looking at things to me. It's just obvious to me that I wouldn't die for a worm or a bucket or a leaf, or there's no call to this.
There's no call to this.
Yeah, but that's weird it feels weird for me to hear you say that, Mitch. Like, it would feel more correct for Jacob or someone who doesn't say they're a Christian to say that. It feels weird for me to hear a Christian say it, because if you are the chief of all sinners, if you are that maggot, that worm, then if God calls you a worm and then says, here's your salvation, here's your resurrection, be born again, renewed, restored, why wouldn't you offer that to the actual worm? Like, is he just making a pun, or just it's all strictly metaphorical?
I don't have that to offer. It's been offered to me. It hasn't been offered to the worm or to the bucket or to the leaf.
Because you haven't offered it.
I don't have it to offer.
But you do. That's that. I thought that was the whole Christian theology. Freely you receive, freely give. God gave it to you, so why wouldn't you have it?
You don't have the capacity to create this subversive order where I guess essentially there is no order, where there's no such thing as placement or position, or there's no value structure, but there is a value structure, and this to me ignores that.
And wait, say more. Like, how am I coming across that way? That it ignores the value structure. I think I'm exalting the worm above man or something, I guess.
Yeah. For me,
The way you
to die for a worm would be ignoring the value structure offered.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, there's a way, like even right now, I would want to tell, like, guys, sucks. Right now, like, I would want to tell you, and like, if I was talking to anybody else, I would say, don't die for the worm. Like, that's not for you to do. But then when I think about myself, as soon as I think about myself, I'm like, that's my duty to do it. And there's this weird way, like I feel it to the depth of my soul. Like, that's what I mean. It's like, and that's why I get so despairing, because I'm like, if there's not love for the most unlovely thing, then there's no love for me. Like, does that make sense? And if
Well,
I,
it's to the degree it makes sense to the degree that you become the arbiter of what's valuable, and it makes sense to the degree that, well, imagine from our perspective that our salvation is arbitrary. I don't think that it is, but from our limited perspective, it may be the best we can do is to see it that way. But in any case, it's not for us to stay the Lord's hand or ask him, what has he done? Why would you save me and not this worm? He has decreed it. This is, I just,
so there's, like, you're sensing like a hubris almost, and a self
well,
exaltation, and like some sort of exalt in the things I'm saying. Jacob's nodding his head.
I wasn't going to say hubris, but if to ignore the value structure offered and to take it up as arbiter on your own would be, I think, dangerous and mistaken.
I guess I think I see what you're saying. Like, I'm almost ignoring the natural way that God has ordered and created the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I guess my question still is, like, does redemption do that, though? Like, that's what I don't mean. I don't know that that's what I wonder, if redemption does that, because, like, I mean, the whole idea of, like, shit making good soil, like, I know that shit is shit, right? So I don't think but then at the same time, it turns into soil, and then you have, like, a Garden of Eden through it. So it's like, does redemption actually ignore that value structure? And God, setting the lowest to the highest, like what is that with that part with Nebuchadnezzar? It says God sets on high the lowest of men, and things like that. Is that kind of ignoring a? Yeah, I mean, I would have to say it's not, because God does it.
You might say it was within a boundary. You might say there was some kind of ignoring of a value structure within mankind, but it seems like you're taking a rule for the whole and applying it to the part.
A rule for the same,
or a rule for the part and applying it to the whole, rather.
Am I do that? Because that often feels like an error in my own thinking. Like I said before, people think I think really freely and esoterically, and I also feel like I'm continually trapped in mathematics, where I'll find something and try to apply it to everything.
This first would be the last business, is within the framework of mankind, right? So you're not going to take it and then apply it to the universe.
Okay, I see what you're saying, I guess.
Hey,
it strictly applies. But why does that happen, though? Like, why does it only apply to mankind? Is it just because, I guess it's just one of those God says sort of things? If I like you're saying, if I question it, why did God make it this way? There's a bit of hubris.
Well, it may well be, or it may be that we could actually find the answer to it. But it seems to be the case. And now the why is a different question. But leaving it that it seems to be the case, unless there was some, evidence to the contrary, you can always search for the why. So it's not God has decreed it into discussion, although it is, but you could always search out the why, even as you operate within the bounds as you see them.
Hi, Sandy.
Hey,
It's good to see you.
Am I hearing you? Sorry, I'm on lunch break at work. Am I hearing you correctly? Are you basing value around life and death? Like your value as in like you cannot somehow, like are you wanting to, what are you wanting to save a worm from? And why would you see yourself as a worm?
What
Okay,
am I
are you
wanting to
losing
save the
weight?
world from? No, these. Sorry, what am I? What?
Are you losing weight?
I don't think so. I had a haircut. That might be it.
No,
They talked about
it was the
haircuts when I go to
shoulders.
India.
They look skinnier.
Oh, well, I hope so. I want to be a skinny queen. You know, that's the goal. No, I got back from India, so I wouldn't be surprised if I lost a little bit of weight. Which is weird because I'll eat 3 meals a day there, and I'll lose weight. And I come back here, I'll eat like 1 meal a day, and I'll gain weight. It's just
That's
So the
food.
garbage.
weird. That's how eating poorly works.
It's miserable. I mean, I eat big meals over there too. You get like a whole. They eat so much rice. It's a lot, and it's
Healthy
delicious.
food.
And
Yes, but
yeah, and
when you're actually getting nutritious food, you're not as hungry and you eat less.
yeah, it's nice. It's nice food over there. So am I hearing you right? And I'm basing this. Let me see. I'm trying to recall your question again. Why would I want to? What am I trying to save the world? Am I thinking I was being saved from or trying to save the world from? I guess what I'd be attempting to save the world from is some sort of disunity, where like if we don't see our relation to the other aspect of creation, if we don't see a relational aspect, a give and take, a self-sacrificial relationship to at least some measure, then I fear that it would. I guess that would be my fear, is it would fall into disunity or some sort of combativeness, or like even with AI, like, you know what I mean. I think that's what people are afraid, is because it's just a tool, then that's your relationship with it, and that's why people are scared with it. They're creating a tool, and then they're worried that it's going to make them a tool of it, and that's what people say about all these technologies. Like, we created this technology to help us, so we created a tool, and we became a tool of it without even realizing it.
Does that
So that would
make
be kind of
sense?
what? Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I guess that would be it. Is just like this weird. If you can see, and you might not have to see yourself in the worm, but at least like your connectedness to it, and then you're co-working with it. And I feel like if you lose that, which is kind of like seeing yourself in the worm, you know, if you lose that connectedness, then I think the world just starts to deteriorate, right? I guess that's what I'm kind of getting at, and at least to some measure. But probably, like you said, I'm probably throwing it into some sort of existential realm of life and death, where like Mitch is talking, I'm taking one thing, trying to like apply it fractally to everything, and be like, you know. So I'm probably trying to take those little things and blow them up on a larger scale.
Sounded like you were using the worm analogy to assign a lower value to yourself too. Was that something I was hearing?
Yeah. Also, that's some of it too, because I think I want, if love, and not just some petty idea of love, but like this burning, passionate, self-sacrificial, godly, jealous love is what creates recreates the world. Like, I want that love to stretch to every aspect of creation, like both past, present, and future potential creation. And if it doesn't, like, you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. Like, if it doesn't do that, I don't think it's going to save me, because I think because if God has actually given a gift of eternal life, and if I have to go living on for eternity, like, there's some way at some point out in eternity that I could very easily imagine that worm looking more righteous than I would. We've all done despicable things, but it's like, so if that love doesn't reach, if I don't see that love reach to the worm, the lowest of the low, if I don't see it reach the pile of shit and redeem it into good soil, then I don't see it doing it for me either. And it's not necessarily like I'm constantly thinking of myself as a piece of shit. It's just that I think the love has to to transform and recreate all, like the lowest of the lows, the most damnable things.
Is that sounds very Calvinist.
It probably is, but it sounds universal to me.
Say it.
It sounds Calvinist, but it also sounds universal to me, because I'm like, that to me is what I believe, like that everything can and will be redeemed.
Okay, but
that's no, everything being redeemed doesn't mean everything will be the same.
Say more.
A worm will still be a worm. A dog will still be a dog, and a human will be a human in a redeemed world. They will be the perfection of that which they are, but a human is the pinnacle of creation, because humanity was created in the image of God. None of those other things were.
Okay, but why does God, this is probably going to be kind of a somewhat asinine question. Why does God then say to Jacob, thou art a worm? Like, Jacob, you worm, he says in Isaiah. Like, why would God make that comparison?
Because no, it's a comparison. It's not a good thing. Like,
yeah,
a human being, like David says, I am a worm and not a man, right?
Yeah.
It's from Psalms, right?
Yeah,
but that's when we are being the worst of what we are. And when we are the best of what we are greater than the angels.
Yeah, I guess I'm not trying to imply that the worm will become a man. I guess what I'm trying to more imply is that there's a if I through, this is gonna sound Calvinist and in like Christian, but if I through transgression and things like that, if I have found myself in places where I find myself lower than a worm, which I don't think is hard for me to do. It's like if God is offering for me to still be loved, then I find, then that's what I mean. Then I won't take things like worms and say they're irrelevant to creation.
Nobody
they still get off.
Okay, you're falling into this binary of heaven or hell, right?
Really?
And it's not heaven or hell. It's gradations of creation, and some things are greater than others.
Okay.
And that's how it should be. And redemption is for all things to be where they belong in the hierarchy. Not that there would not be a hierarchy, but that each thing should be in its correct place in the hierarchy.
Yeah.
Would you
not
say the same judgment over the worm if the worm could not somehow love the way a man was called to love? Would you put that expectation on it? Then
no, not at all. I guess
so. A worm is designed to live and die and to do everything that it has in its power to do as a worm. But you are designed to live and die and everything in between as a man.
Yeah, which is to be in the image of God, right? God.
You're allowed to love yourself.
No pressure. Yeah,
of course not. Yeah. Why would there be pressure?
Well, the thing is, I guess what I'm getting at is like there is. I mean, I don't mean to fall into this like binary of heaven and hell. I'm not trying to do that. I guess I'm just saying there's a temptation to do that if I don't love all things, is I guess what I'm saying. Like, because if I don't recognize the potentiality of the shit, like, then I don't recognize that it could be good soil. And so I could just throw it away and be like, I don't need this. This is irrelevant. Like, I don't need this at all, which we've seen people do like throughout, history and everything. But yeah, I mean, I understand the hierarchy. Like, you don't go and take chicken and put it on your table and eat it. But the way you do that is it goes in your garden, then it comes from your garden. So it's like you kind of are eating from shit. But when you realize what, like, that, I need to stop saying shit. The fertilizer when you realize what the fertilizer does for your garden, you come into this communion and love with it, right? And you almost have, and it's weird. There's such a relationship with it where you almost like see aspects of yourself in it and aspects of it in you. Like, I guess you would say spiritually or metaphorically, but there's still you recognize the relationship with it. And I think that unity of the relationship of like you see yourself in it and you see it in you is like this weird connectedness throughout the world, which I think is a salvific like connectedness, but that all works through love.
To the same question I asked you about the work. God has designed everything for a purpose. Everything has its place in the world. It has its value, and its value is the right value, not a wrong value. It's not like, you're talking about shit, and you're talking about your garden, and you're talking about getting food on the table, and it's beginning to sound like the only way that the only value is the end result. What about the in-between? You're talking about the fact that shit can somehow redeem the soil by making better soil. And then the better soil is going to make some kind of plant that will be a better plant. And then the better plant is somehow going to feed you, and you will. But that's.
What's the in-between? That's a good question. I'm really curious. Is the in-between man? Is that what it is?
I was thinking
that's
earlier.
That's a really good question.
So what is man? Like, what? Are you man when you are a second old? Are you man when you're 99.999 out of 100 years old? Are you? Right. When are you man?
Yeah. Is man always the in-between? I guess that's my question. Because you're always becoming, right? Because you're kind of always you're in the state of becoming with man. I guess, yeah. I mean, that's a good.
You are becoming, but you also are exactly who, when, and where God placed you. Like, go back before your existence. You have parents. Your parents made you. However many, I'm not good at science. However many, not you, out of the many eggs and the many sperm that your parents created for the potential of a child did not get to have the same run at life that you are, simply because of whatever. Are they less than you? Are you more than them? I mean, this is a thing. And when are you more than them or less than them? Those are kind of little worms too. I mean, seriously. Mm-hmm. God makes everything exactly how it should be. So right now, even though you're on a journey and you don't know how long the journey is and you don't know all the details of the journey, you're still in a good place on the journey because God knows exactly where you are and has always known that. And then the only other thing I won't say that yet. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and it's good for me to hear that.
Like, and you were talking about giving and receiving and all the complexities of giving and receiving. Everything we do in life involves giving and receiving. We breathe in and out. Everything we touch shares life or death with us. Something good or whatever germs we've touched. Everything. We're meant to be in constant relationship with anything that God has brought into our wherever we are. And all we can do is trust him with it. And I was thinking when you and Jacob and Mitch were talking at the beginning, and I was saying it sounded like almost you're diminishing yourself. So you're making it out like your capacity becomes smaller and smaller and smaller until God somehow redeems you out of that, yanks you out of it, and then you somehow go from as diminished as you could possibly be to this amazing, loving, everything in existence being. And I'm like, But where is the receiving? Where is the expanding of who you are? You can't love unless you also receive love from God, other people, from what you like. You have to be willing to make space inside you for
me,
love.
Yeah, to me, this is it's weird. I'm sorry it came across that way. To me, it's actually an expansiveness. What I was talking about,
Mm.
the expansiveness to love the worm, like the weird kind of loving downward into
What
the
about
belly of
loving
hell.
you?
Like, yeah, well, that too. But I mean, like,
Where is the component that loves Jason?
I don't know. You know, when I'm asked that question, if I'm just gonna be blunt and honest, when I'm asked a question like that, I often think I see that component way too much, and I wish I could just squish it forever. And I know that's gonna sound bad to you, but I feel like I've done plenty of loving myself, and I do enough of it just inherently without even thinking about it that I often wish to have a lot less of it. That's
That
my
so that this is where I'm gonna do the Luke Thompson thing of claiming that things are seem like love, you can't call them love, right? If it when you love yourself, right, and you're doing it correctly, which is with proper idea of the vessel, right?
yeah.
If it is the proper love of yourself, then there's nothing wrong with it. It's in fact
Mhm.
what you are commanded to do. You shall love your neighbor as yourself.
I'm
You
just
have
here for the
to
spanking.
have you have to have a proper love for yourself. Michael,
Good. What's
Howdy.
up, man? Hey, it's good to see you again.
long
It's been a
time
very
no
long time.
see.
Yeah.
I know it's been a minute. Crazy year. I just kind of came to hang out.
Nice. Happy to have you. Got any thoughts?
Um, when I hear conversations like this, a couple of things come to mind. Love in English frustrates me. And I've found the only way that I've reconciled it is probably a pretty like Petersonian kind of thing. But I think it's also inherently like Johnsian, of understanding agape. So it's this balance of grace and truth. So here's this acceptance and patience, but also it has to be reconciled with sort of like a more masculine truth. So there's something there to me in the nature of love. And then I also think of an impromptu rant that Peugeot went on during the Thunder Bay conference as he saw love, especially the English word of it and the use of it as a uniting factor. It's like that word is used intentionally and structured that way to encapsulate so much, to bring so many ideas into union. So I think that there's something interesting there. And then the second thing that comes to mind, other than the complications with the word love, is discerning what's out of order. So there's like it seems like there's a fine line, right? Maybe a narrow path between the grace, acceptance, and patience of that which is disorderly, that is used to bring about orderliness, and in some ways vice versa, and where metanoia or repentance, right, comes in place in order to put something in order, but order itself can't be an idol either, right? It can't be over prioritized. So that, I don't know, those are things that came to mind for me in listening to some of this.
Sorry, I'm looking at Jacob. Didn't know if he had something to say. It's got nothing. Can you say the last part again?
Michael, everything right.
What? Get everything right. you say that last part again when you're saying the thing about the order of metanoia?
Yeah, well, one way that I see that I personally experienced something like metanoia is so here I was in this like pretty deep, like leftist, communist, disorderly path, right? And I mean, just like every facet of my life, really. I'd been down that road for some time, and everything is arbitrary and deconstructionist. Okay, so there is no order; it's all chaos. So then, turning around and walking the other way was, oh, there is a hierarchy to things things do matter, do have meaning.
Billy, I muted you. Your mic's really loud.
And so then all of a sudden things had to come back into order. But I actually experienced a weird thing in the middle of that, which is was a like I don't know, maybe I don't know if temptation's the right word, but like an inclination for too much orderliness, right? A rigidness of putting things in order. And so it was like this huge tilt the other direction. And I can't help but notice this like it's almost hard, like the best way I have to describe it is also kind of complicated to even say, because it's very socially like weird, right? Because it's like, here's this, I'm going to say feminine over grace thing. It's like the true extreme of a feminine take, right? The love of a mother that accepts anything her child does. And then on the far other direction is the father who accepts nothing but exact orderliness. And it's almost like a psychological or spiritual shift between those two things. And I've found that agape is being able to have both of those in their fullness, right? Not even like half and half of each, but it's all of it, which is like maybe the only way to aim at how to raise a child, and the only way to embrace love at all.
Sounds right to me. Yeah, that's what I was actually talking to Joseph earlier today about. What feels to me like a similar idea. I don't know if it is. I mean, I could draw parallels through it. Is that we're talking about a totally different topic, but just the way mercy and truth seem to always be referenced hand in hand in the scripture, and kind of how, and is at least how it kind of works in my head too. That truth needs to be on like a throne of mercy or something, or like in a womb of mercy. So any truth you have, kind of like a statement of fact, or like a father's strict orderliness or DNA, that has to go into a womb, a mother's womb, sort of that idea of, like you said, like compassion or grace or something. And it's only when those two are like working together that you get the proper agape or love for the child.
Yeah, well, I every time I'm at liturgy within the little Orthodox parishes that I'm in, and I'm sitting there looking at this huge icon of the Theotokos, right, bearing Christ. I can't get that out of my mind of like something like divine grace giving birth to Logos, something like that.
Yeah, I mentioned like a very image when I was talking to you. If I was like, I know this is, because I was trying to explain to him the idea, and I was like, I'm sorry if like my language just continually gets like imagistic and poetic or something, but that's where my mind kind of goes sometimes with images like that. And you have Christ, the Logos, who is like the Logos, the truth, the Word, the life, and he's sitting on the lap of the Theotokos. See, like right in front of her belly, like right in front of the womb. You have all of that working in that one image.
Which I think relating that to something like Sophia makes a lot of sense too, right?
Yeah.
The feminine wisdom giving birth to truth, something like that.
I like that. Yeah, I also see it. That was the thing too, is like I also see it in the Old Testament too. And I don't know if this is, maybe Jacob can tell me, maybe this is reading through the glass the wrong way. But when the like one of, honestly, my favorite part I think in Exodus is when it's talking about the description of the building of the temple. Oddly enough, the plagues don't really interest me as much. But when it talks about the mercy seat and things like that, that's usually what I think about, is like if that is God's throne and his chariot, and you have something like God is a consuming fire. He's kind of the judge of all judges, right? He's the judge of all the earth. That's what Abraham calls him. But his throne is no mercy seat's not the right word. The atonement seat. But yeah, but that's kind of, it feels to me like a similar image of like the logo sitting on Mary's lap or something. Even when you get to Solomon, you have Solomon takes the throne, and then he builds the throne he builds at his right hand to her mother Bathsheba.
I mean,
which I think,
obviously, this is extremely Christian imagery that I don't identify with at all, because I think the point of the temple is precisely that it's like all the other temples, except where the idol would be, there's nothing there. And that's the point. There's nothing there.
So it should just be an image of Mary with no Jesus on the lap. I'm just kidding.
For me.
Well, I think that language is right. There's no thing there. Yeah.
Say more.
No, it frames. I mean, it's self-referentially ineffable, right? I talk about, like, why do I write G-D? Like, when I write G-D, you know I'm writing G-O-D, so why don't I just write G-O-D? Like, G-O-D is also a symbol.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm doing it because it's self-referentially ineffable. It's like, yeah, I'm referring to that thing. What thing? Like, we call God Hashem, the name. Like, when you say the name, you're referring to the name, which is referring to God. Like, because you're saying, oh, I am trying to refer to God, but I know that I can't refer to God.
Yeah, we tend to think of that. Well, I just recently connected that a little more with how Orthodox talk about energy and essence distinctions. But the point more being like that which is unreachable, right? Name beyond name. That which cannot be named, that contains the entire cosmos. And then we have naming, which we use or interact with, right? Whether it's G-D or the name or whatever, where there's like a weird middle step. And we think of that as almost like a bridge of that which is reachable, that points at the Father, which is unreachable.
Oh, Sandy left. Oh. Matthew, you should jump in here. Hi, Billy Ray. I didn't even say hello yet. How have you been? It's been a long time.
Hey, how are y'all? Hey, do you mind if I back up just a little bit? Because there was something that y'all tweaked my interest with. Do you mind?
No.
Okay. I'm doing well, Jason. I hope you're doing well. I hope we get a chance to catch up again.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So, but I heard y'all talking about love, so I missed probably about the first 45 minutes of this conversation. But some people like me have the mistaken idea, or had the mistaken idea, of love is service to other people, right? Giving yourself up. to help. That's how you show love, is to basically sacrifice yourself for other people's well-being and good. And just like this feller, I'm sorry, I don't know you very well, Michael, um, was talking about order. Uh, Something that I've experienced in my life and with some other men specifically, I know we have a tendency to make ourselves slaves to these two aspects, to order and love, right? It's either to service and sacrifice, and our orderliness, right? And it's not instead of trying to balance both of them out, we'll lean way too far to one side or the other, and we end up being tyrants to ourselves and completely defeating what we're trying to do to begin with, right? Because we enslave ourselves to an idea, which to me is the highest order of a idol, right? Because we're so focused in on this idea of doing things that everything else falls falls to the wayside. You almost put yourself in shackles. I hope that makes sense.
So we get it. We get it. Echo when we talk. Yeah. Your mic is catching up from your thing, so I don't know if there's a way of preventing that, but that's what's happening. No, I think Billy gets it. Yeah.
So again, probably pretty darn Petersonian, but one of the things that struck me in loving and serving others is that also means like becoming who I need to become in relation to the roles that I have, right? So in relation to others. So not a father yet, God willing, sometime soon, but let's say that, and let's say being a husband, and then being a son, and then being a member of my parish, and then being a co-worker, and then so I have to fulfill these roles, right, to be the highest me, right, and then that brings me into union with others, right. So my desires can be transformed from a selfishness that is that which I want that separates me from others, right? So maybe like I want to smoke weed and play video games, right? But instead of that, right, I sacrifice those. I put those things to death, and then prioritize my time within a hierarchy that draws me into the highest version of myself for them. Now, ideally, they're doing the same, right? And it brings us all together within the roles that we should fill respectively. When that starts to break down, well, it's like, okay, well, maybe your girlfriend or your wife isn't doing the same. Well, perhaps there's a case to be made that should you follow through on that example, right? Not as a martyr necessarily, but maybe not that far from it, and go, this is the example to emulate. And it's like, okay, I can see that pattern, right, as better than I just want to go out and drink all the time or something, right? And so then there's when that pattern is shown, then there's a mimicry, right? Like a monkey see, monkey do that filters down the chain. So the pain that we might experience in sacrificing what we want to do, all that time that I wanted to play Diablo and get really high, instead, the highest version of me and the most fulfilling life that I could have what I am thankful that I did when I'm eventually on my deathbed. Those things are more in place rather than, oh man, I wish I would have played more video games, something like that.
Can I ask, I guess, a practical and probably very emo question to that to follow up? So in doing that, you find a better way of living, and that's a you're sacrificing your own like base, maybe surface level desire in pursuit of someone else. And so you're giving yourself almost to these other forms of identities to be there for those people you're talking about, to be a good father, to be. What happens when that gets ripped out from under you? Like I often imagine what it must be like for parents when their kids, fly the nest. Like, because then they have to, you experience this whole like identity crisis, and then it just seems like all that love you poured into, it's not that it's useless, but it's very destabilizing. And then you often see people kind of want to, they look lost, and then they fall back into those first desires you're mentioning, like drinking, playing video games or something, because there's just a overwhelming despair. I don't know. I still don't know what to do with all that.
So I would hope, that in humility, I turn my heart upward so that the Father's love might work through me. And what that seems to look like is like the prodigal son, right? And his father's arms were open the whole time. Son could have returned at any point, right? The alternative is the father's heart grows cold and resentful, doesn't have his arms open. His son comes back and won't accept him. But that's from the pit, right? Rather than the love that emanates from above, from the Father. So should I die to my own selfish hurt? Oh, they left, right? Oh, this person didn't do me right. Should I sacrifice the selfish hurt that I feel from that for a love that is beyond me, that I'm not capable of, right? But has to work through me? Only then can my arms be open, like the father from the prodigal son.
I guess, that makes sense to me. I guess what I'm kind of getting at too is also like, I guess maybe a better way to frame it is like kind of in the idea of Job too. Like if he had, he doesn't, it's not like his daughters and his sons can come back to him. He's just kind of thrown in this place of like, everything I am, Father, all this stuff is just like completely obliterated in this moment. What do I do? Type thing. And it I guess the reason I asked it too is because I was thinking like ultimately on our deathbeds, I don't think we get to take any of those identities with us. And I guess you're just left with kind of like you said, this humble surrender to God, because you don't, when you're going that sleep, I don't know that you get to take all those identities you were in life with you. I mean, maybe you do. I don't know.
So in Tarpon Springs, during the Symbolic World Summit thing, Father Stephen DeYoung and Jordan Peterson had a little chat about that.
Really?
Yeah. I think the long and the short of, because Peterson was basically asking Father Stephen his perspective on that, and I don't think I'm miscommunicating his view, which is like all that goodness is what's taken with you, and then all the deadwood is what's burned away. And Peterson was asking about that. It's like, what if you're all deadwood? And it's like, well, that's hell. That's then there's nothing but fire.
I think I'm gonna let you guys talk. I don't have much to add. I'm so happy to see the both of you, and I should be doing other stuff. Unless there was anything specific you guys wanted to talk to me about.
I did have one thing, if you wouldn't mind entertaining it.
Anytime you want You know I am there. So yes.
I I've been enjoying Alex O'Connor's parade through the various things, and so he's really pushing people on things like Leviticus 20, right?
What's Leviticus 20?
That's where we've got like consequences that are to be punishments for disobedience, right?
Right.
And I'm really tempted to. So as I've been digging into both the Gottenheim Septuagint Greek that I can put together, and the Hebrew, I've been very tempted to see that through. What I'm worried about is too like Gnostic of a lens.
So his problem is with the death penalty.
So yeah, so he'll point to that stuff. He'll also point to like what happened to the Amalekites, like genocide, and so my lens on these things has been changed by Father Stephen's illumination of those by way of like, well, it's not annihilation, right? Or what was?
I haven't read God is a Man of War.
Yeah.
Everything I have heard, Father Stephen wrote that book, God is a Man of War.
Yeah.
He uses all of the same arguments I would.
Yeah.
Which include, there is zero historical evidence that the Jews ever had a formal capital punishment system.
Right.
So anytime you bring up capital punishment, like, there's a reason the Gospel of John says that the Sanhedrin says we cannot put any man to death, because that's not what we do. Like, that's not a Jewish thing, and it hasn't been, right? So a large part of this is first reading the Hebrew Bible through a Marcionite lens, which ultimately Dawkins tried that with Rabbi Sachs, and Rabbi Sachs said this is an anti-Semitic lens to read it through, and I agree. But the second thing I would add, in addition to all of those arguments, is where are you standing? Where are you standing that you're judging, you're passing judgment on the Hebrew Bible? And this is basically the Tom Holland argument, right? You're judging the Hebrew Bible as faulty based on your presuppositions of Christian morality, which came from the Hebrew Bible, right? So before you can tell me, right, same thing with slavery. Before you can tell me that the Hebrew Bible is insufficiently critical of slavery, you have to tell me why you think slavery is wrong.
Yeah.
Where did you get this idea that it's wrong for me to kill people?
Look here. Sorry, my mic wasn't working earlier. So something that's been very prevalent through this little conversation here, but it's way prevalent in the world too. I'm hearing just now either ors, right? You can either be this or you can either be that. The Bible can be bad or it can be good. Or how about nature in general? Everything in general has its ups and downs, its highs and its lows. You're gonna be a drunk scumbag one day, then you're gonna be, the saint that delivers food to the woman who's dying. The Bible is going to be murderous one day and not murderous the next, right? Our nature in itself is fluid. It moves constantly. Where do you think that comes from? Where do you think the good and the bad and the ugly comes from? Did it just come from nowhere? Or maybe it comes from the same person who inspired the Bible to begin with, along with the entirety of the world, right? We are created in God's image, right? You can't tell me the murder just come out of nowhere. You can't tell me the good just come out of nowhere. It all comes from God. So of course his Bible is going to, his divine word is going to reflect that, right? And we only know that it's bad because he told us it was bad. Nobody was born yesterday saying murder is bad or slavery is bad. Nobody's done that. There's no either or. Everything is true at the same time. I'm sorry. You hit a pet peeve.
So, Jacob, here's the lens that I come at it from. And I've had to come all the way back through, like, I don't care about any of this. I am this nihilist, atheist, deconstructionist, whatever, like all this stuff. So it's like I have to build everything back up through. So first, what struck me is the nature of death, right? And I can't help but see how I was in death. I was in death, and who I was had to be annihilated, right, in order for me to be brought into something higher, right? So, so then I look at, and again, Father Stephen's sort of making these points of, well, we have these examples of basically assimilation of here's these people that were in these gigantism death things that had to annihilate who they were, take on a new name, right, to be immersed in Israel, right? Now, it's not to say that there aren't such extreme examples of being at the whims of rebellious Elohim, that there wasn't physical conflict. It's not to say that didn't happen, but that perhaps, and maybe primarily, the elimination of a rebellious spirit over a people is the death of that, right? And those people dying to who they were in order to be given new life within Israel. Is that
okay?
so?
I have to. I mean, I smiled because I figured you might be aware that this is one of the big disagreements between Christianity and Judaism, which is we don't believe in rebellious angels and spirits. There is a spirit of rebellion, right? And there is this idea that people who are caught up in the spirit of rebellion deserve destruction, right? But that has to be understood within the context of one of my favorite verses in the Bible, where Saul is pursuing David to kill him, and David, through circumstances, ends up in a position to kill Saul, and he cuts off a piece of Saul's robe, and after Saul is far away from him, he shows the piece of Saul's robe to Saul, and he says, as the ancient proverb, and this is what I love about it, is this is David quoting an ancient proverb in the Bible. How old is this ancient proverb, right? As the ancient proverb goes, Mirasha Tetzeresha, that evil comes from those who are evil, right? So we have a concept in Judaism which we do apply to ourselves, which is if God needs to destroy people, he can do it himself. He doesn't need me to be his agent, right? And that's actually what Chezi was referring to when he said once every 70 years, right? Which is that during the Second Temple period, our tradition is that the Sanhedrin left the temple because they saw that too many people deserved to be put to death, and they resigned because they were like, not our job. You want to do it, you do it yourself, right? So, okay, I understand this argument, right? And yes, I mean, we believe when the Bible says people are so and so are deserving of death, right? We understand the Bible is actually telling us something as opposed to being worthless, which is what people who explain away the text do. An Orthodox Jew cannot explain away the text of Leviticus, God forbid, right? It is a part of our text. But what it is imparting to us is not what Alex O'Connor and these people want imparted. What it is telling us is okay, this is something bad, right? And how bad is it? It's a capital sin, right? That's not license for me to go around killing people. And that's what Alex O'Connor wants to understand this as, right? Now, we could talk about the supposed genocides, but the fact is that the way we understand, if you are to say that the things in, for example, Joshua happened exactly as they are described, which I have to say that's not a necessary component, certainly for Noachites and even for an Orthodox Jew to actually believe that, right? But let's say that you do believe it is precisely a description of exactly what happened, which for parts of it I think is obviously not true, right? When we get to, for example, Saul not killing the children of the Amalekites, right? Like, I think it's obvious that that is making a point when it's saying Saul killed little babies, but he didn't kill the king, right? Because it's telling us something, and I don't think it is literal. But let's say you do take it literally. In that context, you're talking about people for whom God has passed judgment, not whatchamacallit, not a license for us to pass judgment. And that's completely different from what people claim, which is it's a genocidal text. I'm sorry, are you telling me there are Amalekites nowadays who are afraid of being put to death by Orthodox Jews? Because I've never heard of such a thing.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, we're all created in the image of God, right?
Correct.
Okay. Are you more favored than I am? Am I more favored than you are by God?
In certain ways, do you mean as far as Jew and Gentile?
Billy
No, I
Ray is
just
more
mean as
favored
in,
than all of us.
I just mean as in person. Not leave the distinction of Gentile and Jew aside for a moment.
God loves each of his children according to how he created them. So
Okay.
there is a sense, right, that there's a difference. But so the comparison I like to make is like you can have $1 million or you can have $1,000, right? But when you compare $1 million and $1,000 to a credit card that you don't get the bill for, right? Like there's no amount of money you can pay to buy a credit card that you don't pay the bill for. And so in comparison to infinity, 1,000,000 and 1,000 are not very different. So are there taller mountains and shorter mountains? Yes, but they were all created by God, and therefore, in comparison to his greatness, they're all the same.
So the reason why I ask, Antonio shared this with me 6-8 months ago. It's an article off the Chabad website, and I found many articles similar to this since then. When the Hebrew people were brought out of Egypt, was God not right there suffering with his Egyptian children too? When a maneuver happens in the Bible, when something historically happens, that was he not right there when that death and mayhem happened? Was he not there with those people that it happened to, and also at the same time the people perpetrating it? Is he not there with the victim of sexual assault and also the sexual assaulter? He's there with both. He's experiencing both.
So we are so in my Tanya stuff, we are about to approach the only part of Tanya I considered skipping, which is an incredibly difficult thing, and I just considered skipping it. It's Epistle 25, and we're gonna do it because Yosef said we should do it. I don't think I think large numbers of people will deliberately not understand what I'm saying when I try to explain it, as always happens with something like this. But yeah, God is there in exile among the idolaters.
Right. So if he's in exile with the idolaters and he's experiencing, all of this with us, he's as part of him. Should we not look deeper at what the Bible says itself, what the texts say, and what's the broader meaning? I find it hard to take anything literal, right? How do you, even something that happened yesterday, right, that I saw with my own two eyes and I experienced it, what I saw and experienced and what the person standing next to me saw and experienced is two different things, and they're two different histories and two different realities. We're going to see them slightly different. So I have a hard time taking things as literal facts with anything written or any story form at all. Well, what is it teaching us? What are we supposed to be learning from it? What are we supposed to be seeing from it? And we always have to remember that if God is asking you to deliver this onto that person, he's asking you to deliver it upon himself, because he's going to be there present on both ends of it.
I have
I
a
hear
question.
what you're saying. I'm not sure most people can understand that level of abstraction.
Is that a lot of abstraction? I just seems normal to me, but okay.
That's so when stages of human development, the highest stage of human development, which you would hope most adults get to, most human beings get to it around the age 16. There are plenty of people who have a lot of difficulty with that level of abstraction, and even if they are capable of it, once you're talking about the type of stuff you're talking about, you have to be of greater than normal intelligence to understand these things. And some people will simply not understand them.
Okay, you lost me there because I'm of average intelligence at best,
You are
and
not
it just
average.
seems to fit in like
Yeah.
a puzzle piece.
Sorry, Ray, Billy, but you're not of average intelligence.
Okay. Hey, Jason had a question. What's up, Jason?
Well, my question, I think, is kind of related to what Billy was saying, like learning something from the text. So I was going to ask you, Jacob, before you leave. Well, first of all, I was going to say to Michael, but now he's gone. I don't know if he's still listening, but I was going to say hi from Rebecca. Apparently, she knows him. It's neither here nor there with this comment that I have. So I told her I'd mention it casually, but he's gone. So maybe he'll hear it later. But my question was in the Leviticus 20 thing. And looking at the text, I agree with you, Jacob, on like having to really wrestle with it. I think whether Christian or Jewish, like you should have to wrestle with it and not dismiss it. And I often find like the people that are quicker to dismiss like Old Testament texts are often quicker to dismiss like the Book of Revelation, because the Book of Revelation contains a lot of like kind of the same fire and brimstone and blood and all that stuff. But is there something going on with Noah and apocalypse here? Because I was wondering, because it seems like every time there's an apocalypse, there's this idea of like wine and blood being referenced a lot, or a state of drunkenness as well. And then there's also, but the thing with Noah is here the flood, his nakedness is uncovered. And it seems like in this Leviticus 20, it mentions a lot of uncovering one's nakedness of different relatives, and then it'll say their blood shall be upon them, or their blood is upon them. So then there's like this weird reference to blood as well. Is there like, I mean, is there some like is that like common knowledge or something within Judaism? Is there some pattern that's being referenced here of like
I
some
mean,
sort of
there's definitely
apocalyptic
a pattern. The as far as symbolism, I mean, you're getting to a level of symbolism and abstraction, which I would say anything which you say, if it sounds meaningful to you, that's great, and you can talk about it, but it's a level of abstraction which we have to always put in the vessel of the simple meaning, right?
Okay.
Because you can do the symbolism thing and go way off,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, the idea of drunkenness, the idea of like sexual immorality, like and the apocalypse, like the consummation, like that's a symbolic universe you can talk to
Yeah.
very well, but it's not something you can universalize. It's something that has to be individually.
Has to be particular and practical.
No, it's not even practical. It has to be. It's what you understand of it yourself, right? So here, I'll pull up the Mishnah Chagiga.
Is it the one that talks about Makeh Bereshit?
Maaseh Bereshit.
Maseh Bereshit. That's
You
Kabbalah.
remember which one it is? Which Mishnah it is?
No, I don't remember.
What up, cool kid Kirk? How have you been?
I've been well, Jason. How have you been?
Good. It's good to see you again.
It's
Or hear
been
ya.
it's been like a couple months since I've seen you.
I know. It's been a long time. Where you been? You still tuning into these? You've been around?
Do all or do most Orthodox rabbis believe Maseh Bereshit refers to Kabbalah?
I mean, it obviously does, yeah. Mishnah Chagiga 2:1. Let's make it bigger.
Mishnah Giga.
One may not expound the laws of forbidden sexual relationships before 3 people, nor the account of the creation before 2, nor the divine chariot before 1, unless he is wise and understanding from his own knowledge. Anyone who looks into 4 things is worthy of not having come into the world: what is above, what is below, what is before, and what is after. And anyone who has no consideration for the honor of his maker would be better off if he had not come into the world. Now, so what does that mean? We
Yeah,
don't
please tell me.
we don't teach certain things in front of 3, and one of the ways the rabbis explain that is if you're teaching to 3 students, you may be talking to one of them, and the other 2 may start talking and misunderstand something. If you're teaching to 2 students, right, they may be reluctant to ask in front of someone else, right? Or they may misunderstand when you're trying to explain. So certain things you teach only one-on-one, right? Yeah, exactly. And then there are certain things that you teach that it says you can't even teach to one person. He has to understand from himself, right? And
Okay.
yeah, as far as discussing on stream, I think anything you shouldn't be teaching even before 3, you shouldn't be teaching on.
You shouldn't be. You're
On
not even
stream.
worthy to be born. What did
And
it
this
say?
is
You
and this
shouldn't
is
even be
why
born.
Yeah.
pure Kabbalah, like pure Kabbalah, cannot be transmitted to
Kirk,
anyone. But
okay, what exactly we're talking about, that's a whole other issue. But the symbolic framework you were talking about, it's a symbolic framework which, I mean, you can talk about and we can talk about, but it's not something I can just like be like, oh, this means this, and let's, and go ahead and run with it, because that's the type of thing that there's an easy capacity to misunderstand, and each person has to understand according to their capacity to understand.
Okay, I think I kind of understand more of the point you're making. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it just that, I mean, like I said, I haven't thought about this passage clearly enough, but then for some reason when you guys were talking about it, I was looking at it and that popped into my mind. And it's still things like you said, the symbolic nature of it. I don't even know that I fully understand them, but it intrigues me, and that's just what makes me think that there's like when Billy Ray was talking about like all these different things that happen in history, and one person sees it this way, another person sees it that way. There's almost like there's something more to learn here, and that makes me think that there is something. I mean, and that's what I believe about the text anyway. There's something fundamentally eternal about these scriptures that it. I don't think it's because it represents itself in a symbolic nature as well, but that it but if I can start to grab at the symbolic nature, it would help me better understand it. It's the same thing with the whole numbers part in Numbers 5 when it talks about head covering. Like that just offends so many people, and at first reading, it's kind of offensive. Then once you start to grasp a little bit of the symbolism, then it just kind of blossoms and just looks like this beautiful passage where, like, when you first read it, it just looks like a guy's, is, I mean, making his wife drink holy water because he thinks she cheats on him. But it's like when you see the symbolism, that's what I mean. You see it on kind of nearly on every level of reality, and then it kind of unfolds into something more beautiful. So that's what I was wondering about this passage, where like I don't know what they're saying about it. Like Alex, was it Connor or something, and whoever else, I don't know what they're arguing about it, but I feel like I have the sense that it's probably getting reduced and just kind of dismissed, instead of like someone put it. If they could just put the offense aside of the text, you could find something more beautiful there in the symbolism, if that makes sense. But you're saying the symbolism is kind of forbidden knowledge, is what you're thinking? That shouldn't be discussed on the stream?
Look, no, I mean, I don't think there's any secret that like forbidden sexual relations and the apocalypse are intimately related, pun intended,
Yeah.
topics, right?
Yeah.
And I could talk to you about. I mean, it's all over the place. It's all over the place in Christian theology, right?
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's apocalypse. It's an unveiling. So you're unveiling all of that. Then there's this nakedness happening. Then there's a new creation coming into being. It's all there.
It is intimately related.
It's commanded of every Sabbath, like you said.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly.
Every seventh day.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, going into that level of detail, you're talking about a level of abstraction that, like, Alex O'Connor is just going to roll his eyes at.
Who's this guy? Who is this?
Are you talking about the Jordan Peterson interview?
He did a Jordan Peterson interview recently. Yes, he's kind of a celebrity atheist, but he's not as dumb as most celebrity atheists.
Yeah, he's smarter than like Sam Harris.
Say that again, Jason.
Are you gonna have him on the channel? Destroy him with facts and logic.
If he wants to be on my channel, he's more than welcome. But I am actually gonna go.
Okay. Well,
all right.
Shalom.
That's okay.
I
probably should hop off too. I've been going for a while. I can't do the 9-hour streams like everyone else is doing, so I have to pee really bad.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Oh, bye, Billy Ray. It's good to see you. I'm probably gonna end it here. So.
Bye, man. Good to see you. Yeah, talk to you later. Goodbye.
Bye, Steven.